call the meeting to order if you want to start the recording. Thank you. Okay. Go. Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year to everybody. I am calling this meeting of the Public Safety Communications Task Force to order. It is 11:15 on January 3rd, 2024. I'm Barbara Neal. And as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and the recording will be posted on the task force webpage following the meeting. Let's start with a roll call of task force members. If you could just acknowledge verbally when I call your name. Jen Morrison.
I'm here.
Good morning. Michael Wright.
Here. Morning.
Good morning. Mike Dunges.
Good morning.
Morning. Ron Kumitz.
Good morning.
Morning. And Jim Mack.
Here.
Okay. All righty. Also joining us, of course, is Callie Audette as administrative support. We have, looks like, several members of the public with us. I'll call your name and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and any affiliation you care to share. Stephen, let's start with you.
Steve Whitaker.
Thank you. Jay.
Good morning. My name is Jason Gagne. I'm the Communications Administrator for the Windham County Sheriff's Office.
Thanks for joining us. Kim Cheney.
Good morning. Interested member of the public.
Nice to see you. Let's see. Phil Sisk.
Good morning, Phil Sisk with Mission Critical Partners. Thank you.
Good morning. Okay. Let's see. So we are moving on now to approval of the agenda. The agenda was distributed to task force members by email and is also available on our webpage. Do task force members have any changes to the agenda? No. Okay. Hearing none, we will consider the agenda approved and move on to approval of the minutes. So we have two sets of minutes to approve. The first is from the December 19th regular meeting, number 14. Are there any changes needed for these minutes? Okay, let's move on to the December 22nd, 2023 special meeting. Any changes needed here? Okay. So I will make a motion then that we approve the minutes listed on the agenda today. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Any further discussion or any discussion? All right. All in favor, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 All righty, I see all task force members' hands are up. The minutes listed on today's agenda are approved. So let's move to making sure I have this in the right order here. Review of the draft report to the legislature. So this was distributed to task force members last week, I believe. I'm going to pull up a copy to share, and then we can move through the document and see what changes we may have. Let's see. I said that I was going to bring that up with great confidence. Now let me see that I can find it. There we go. Okay, so we do have a report due to the legislature on January 15th. I will stress that what you're looking at is a draft, so changes are welcomed and expected. Let's see, I can't see you, just so you know, so if you need to interrupt me, just do so verbally because I can't see you anymore. So should we start with the background section? Any changes here? Okay, hearing nothing. We can, you know what I'm going to do? I think let's start with just overall feedback. Is there overall feedback on the document? and
So
things
let's.
we need
let's
to
be
add
clear-
or,
Let's be clear that we're taking feedback from the task force members now, and that if people
Correct.
wish to offer additional feedback, we will be having a public comment after this. So this
Yes.
is for the task force members to chime in here.
good point. So let's do the overall impressions. Are we covering what we need to? Thoughts on that?
Sorry, Kim Cheney, I can't see the whole document.
I'll email it to him. Kim, I'll email it to you.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay,
Jen.
we'll scroll.
I will say that in my review of what I actually or what Commissioner and I drafted, I think it might be worthwhile for us to add a sentence or two that acknowledges what the legislature requested in this report and the fact that we can't deliver that in this report. I think they wanted anticipated timelines, and there were a number of requirements. And we don't specifically say here that we're not going to meet those expectations. So I could work in a sentence about that. And then I also had feedback from Paul White, who has not yet joined. In the report, we state, trying to find exactly where. Okay, it's in the last paragraph under status updates and legislative requirements. The last paragraph, we say, the task force anticipates being able to meet the September 24 deadline for completion of. I'm wondering if we want to convey that much confidence, or if we want to change anticipates to hopes, or we'll be able to provide a better update on our ability to meet that deadline once we have all the system planning folks on board. So thoughts on that?
That
Or
was,
both?
that was the concern that Paul flagged for us, was to
Yes.
perhaps temper our confidence by saying that we will have better sense down the road.
Yes. So if we changed anticipates to some other word, hopes, we'll try.
I think we should flag it and wordsmith it.
Okay.
And we can send it back out to the team for feedback.
All right, we will do just that. Are there any objections to us adding a sentence or two about what the legislation requires and how we're meeting it here, or not, but at least acknowledging what they had requested?
Sounds good to me.
Acknowledge. Okay. We can work that in as we wordsmith probably this entire section. What else? Well, hearing nothing, why don't we, the commissioner and I'll take this back. We will do that wordsmithing. We'll get another version of it out to you before the next meeting, assuming the next meeting will be next week, where we can finalize it. It is due to
I do have
the-
one, I'm sorry, Barb, I do have
No, go
one
ahead.
comment. I thought I sent back, but I probably didn't. I probably meant to in my head and didn't do it. But under the stakeholder engagement and communications, we've actually done more than this. I have personally communicated with all EMS, fire, and law enforcement agencies about the status of the task force, and shared the link to our webpage to be able to stay abreast of what's been going on. So I will try and find where I added a sentence on a previous draft of this so that we can indicate that we have done some pushing of information out. I have also provided updates on the status of this task force at various and sundry meetings of, chiefs and sheriffs, et cetera.
Yes, good point. And I do remember that exchange. I'm not sure if it was in a draft or in an email. I may not have pulled up the most recent as I'm thinking about it, but we will add those details. I've had the Ambulance Association I spoke to, and others, of course. So, okay, we will beef that up with more details. Okay. So the report is due to the legislature on January 15th, which is a holiday. So I would think that means that we need to get this to them by Friday, the 12th. Okay. So we will have this time between now and then to finalize it and get it back in front of you next week.
I don't think it's any, I just want to, as a point of order, ask why this can't be done offline as a group and then sent to the legislature. I mean, this is the opportunity for interested members of the public to provide feedback, but I don't, other than circulating it electronically and asking for further edits from the task force members, does this have to be voted on to send to them? Or is this just a collaborative effort that we're then forwarding on to the legislature?
I don't have Paul White, my open public meeting guru, on here, but I think to be safe, we should have the task force approve the final version. Since
Right,
it's
but that can be done by email is my point, is that the task force
well,
members can.
I would say that could be conducting the business of the task force without, not in a public setting, which we're not supposed to do. So, yeah. I think erring on the side of caution that way would serve us well. And then maybe we can get a firmer answer on those types of things as we move forward, because I'm sure the question will come up again. So. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments from task force members before we leave this conversation? Okay, let me stop sharing. All right. Okay. We will work on that and get that back out to you. So let's move on now to public comment. I'm going to assume that Stephen would like to offer some comments. Is there anyone else on the line that plans to give comments today? If you could raise your hand or otherwise indicate. Okay. Okay. Stephen, would you like to comment today?
Yeah, well, these are directed first to the report. I had hoped to have an opportunity to comment on that separately because I have more than a few minutes. In the report to the legislature, the draft, I noticed there's no mention of the dubious confidentiality policy, the rationale for independent counsel, the difficulty achieving a quorum of 4, and the being boxed into only one really bad choice for project manager, the assertion without any discussion that a single SME rather than having multiple is the route that's being pursued, because that if it was discussed should have been discussed in open session versus executive session. The need for the 911 board access, the need for access to the 911 board cell antenna database, problems with the 9 million earmarked COPS funds, lack of a plan, independent review failure, potential conflicts with the sequence of the task force plan timeline and the 9 million congressionally directed spending. Overall, the lack of any task force work plan, leadership, engagement, or momentum, much less the courage to address the thorny issues that I keep bringing to the attention and somehow never seem to make it to the agenda. There's no mention at all in this report of the specific requirement that the task force shall develop procedures and best practices for state agency cooperation and coordination on matters of overlapping jurisdiction. The primary purpose of this subdivision is to ensure the task force has access to expertise and data related to its mission, including expertise within and data maintained by the Department of Public Service, the Agency of Digital Services, Division of Emergency Preparedness, Response, and Injury within the Department of Health, the Department of Taxes, the Agency of Transportation, the Enhanced 911 Board, and the Department of Public Safety, end quote. Nor is there mention of this requirement. Paren 2, design. On or before January 15th, the task force shall develop findings and recommendations related to draft elements of a preliminary design for a public safety communication systems, including system, not plural, including identification of a proposed implementation timeline and any additional data and resources needed to develop a final design before December 15th of this year. So I'm kind of at a loss of how y'all don't see those as important things to address in reporting to the legislature, and it leaves, you know, interested and informed public to have to, you know, do double time to make up for the lack of this report, including these important elements, to have to educate the legislators on what's really going on. So that's on the report. I also have comments on the disjointed 9 million versus the 11 million and task force jurisdiction versus Department of Public Service Safety. The members of this task force, other than a few that have received some emails, may not be aware that there were no bidders for the independent review of the congressionally directed spending wish list. I notice I didn't call it a plan. With no bidders for an independent review, it appears that a new RFP that appeared yesterday is just another attempt to end around proper statutory guardrails. And I'm arguing in the legislature that the task force needs to have jurisdiction over this 9 million, because you cannot put the cart before the horse and let all that spending go without a plan and then force the subject matter experts, when they're finally hired, to accommodate those fait accompli decisions. You've really got things out of sequence here, and you don't have proper oversight and you don't have proper planning. And that needs to be remedied. And I don't see the membership of this task force wrestling with these thorny issues. No, I don't understand it. And my recommendations to solve it involve expanding the task force by 2 members, having the task force elect its own chair, and the 2 members being from regional agencies like a Sheriff's Association appointee and a regional planning commission staffer who focuses on emergency planning. That would, you know, I think we need to remove the active PSAP restriction on who the police chiefs appoint. I think it's premature to even have ambulance, you know, EMS on here. We're dealing with infrastructure now. It seems like the scramble to not lose the 9 million is distorting this, contorting this process, and potentially corrupting the foundation of the 10-year, $100 million initiative. And we need to get it straightened out now. So that's probably more than you wanted to hear. I have specific recommendations of how to go about that I'm providing to the legislators, but I really wish this task force would have some discussion on this. And the fact that it hasn't is just dumbfounding to me. That's enough.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Does anybody else from the public wish to comment?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Kim.
Well, to me, everything you've done has been cloaked in secrecy. I have no idea what any decisions have been made, who's been appointed, what the criteria are, what the contracts are. To me, it's a total disappointment to
Hey,
come to
Kim, you're
this.
very muffled. If you maybe can you reposition your mic? You're coming out really muffled.
Well, that's the best I can do with it, I guess.
That's fine, Kim. Go ahead. I think we can hear you fine.
Well, I'm just extraordinarily disappointed in where we are at this point. I don't know a thing about anything's been decided. I haven't seen the full report. I haven't seen any draft contracts. I haven't seen any bios of potential bidders. It's a total black hole. And the legislature, the beginning of this was an exciting beginning to try to make a regional communication system. And spelled out a way to begin doing it. And here we are several months later. And we're not one step forward that I can see. Maybe there are things that are happening, but we certainly haven't published any of them that public review. And I don't think this is going to help the process in the legislature. You have to have everybody start all over again. So my comment is get to work and put your information out to the public and let people, including the legislature, which in many ways is the public, certainly the most important public, review what you've done and see if you've carried out their mandate. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kim. I don't usually respond to public comments, but I do just want to say, as far as the contract process goes, a lot of that has had to happen in executive session because of the nature of that beast. So once we're through that, I think some of the information that you're seeking will be available, or the information that you're seeking related to the bids will be available. So that's just a little bit of context on that. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to offer some comments?
I have just one rebuttal, if I may.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Barbara,
hear you, Kim.
I don't see any reason why draft contracts could not be made public, so people would know what you're looking for. That could have happened a long time ago. I think the right to know law affects the actual making of contracts, so that you don't know what A is saying, so B can be against it. So I think this black hole is very disturbing to me.
Okay.
And
Well,
I'd like to note for
Thank you for your
Barb,
comments. Stephen,
just
go ahead
yeah,
for a
one
couple more
very
minutes.
briefly. I just like to note for the other participants here that the person just ahead of me speaking, Kim Chaney, is the former Attorney General. So his analysis of this overuse of secrecy should be taken to heart.
Okay. Anyone else from the public wishing to comment? All right, then. We will move on to new business. Is there any new business from task force members today? Okay, moving on then. Commissioner, you and I did not have an opportunity to discuss this before the meeting. But given an earlier conversation we had by email today, I don't believe there's a reason to go to executive session to give the update on the project management contract work. I think we can provide an update in public session without identifying the vendor because we're not there yet and without identifying the details of the contract itself. So I'll give you an opportunity to agree or disagree, and then we can decide where we're going here.
No, I think that's right. And it probably should fall under new business simply because it's an update. So,
Okay. Okay.
as of this morning, my understanding is that the contract for project management support for the task force is in the final home stretch of state bureaucracy to get it into the right systems that then manage tracking and payment and getting the final approval from the Attorney General's office. And I would anticipate that that should be able to be public. I'm hoping by the end of the week. I think we're almost there across the home stretch. And then there is another contract that is being negotiated with a firm to provide legal counsel to the task force. And that process stalled a little over the holidays. I believe the last update I had is that we are waiting to hear back on potential conflicts of interest and other pieces of that vetting process that have to happen before we sign a contract with them. So that's what I know.
Okay. Are there any questions from task force members on the status of either of those? All right, then. Moving on in the agenda, if there's no other new
guess-
business. Go
I
ahead.
think for new business, we should just say publicly, I don't think it's a secret, but you and I are speaking to House Gov Ops this afternoon at
Oh, yes. Yep.
something 1 or 1:30 today to catch them up on the activities of the task force to date, to seek any feedback or suggestions they have on our report that we will then provide to them by the 12th of January. So that is on tap for this afternoon. That's all I can think of for new business.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Hearing nothing further, let's move to, we're not going to have an executive session today, so let's move to setting the next meeting date and adjourning. So I would recommend that we meet next Wednesday, the 10th at 11:15. Nope, not working for the commissioner. You're muted, Jen. There you
That's
go.
amazing. That would work. That's fantastic.
That will work. Okay. Does January 10 at 11:15 work for the other task force members? Yes, I'm seeing
Yep.
nods.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We will be set for then on the calendar. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I will second that.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Hold.
Aye.
Okay, I see
Aye.
all hands are up, all ayes are accounted for. And we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll talk to you next
Thank you.
week.